Hello again, and in today's Taekwondo lesson, I'll be covering another pattern, Joong-Gun Tul, which is the 6th of 24 patterns in Taekwondo. Joong-Gun Tul has 32 movements, and it's usually taught to a Taekwondo student when they reach blue belt 4th cut. It's quite a tricky pattern because there are a lot of new movements in it. Now, I've shown you most of these new movements in lessons 37 to 43, so watch those videos and get used to doing those movements properly. And today I'm going to show you a couple of more movements and some combinations before moving on to the pattern in full. The first movement in Joong-Gun Tul is a middle block, but using the reverse knife hand. So I've shown you how to do a middle block before, but to do it with the reverse knife hand, you need to form the hand like this. The thumb is tucked out the way because you're using this region to block with. From this angle, you don't see the thumb. From this angle, there should be a gap between the thumb and the inside of your hand. You can just slot your finger in between that gap. The fingers are squeezed together tightly as you do with knife hand. So the middle block is done in the same way as you do an inner forearm middle block, starting from underneath, but you just form the reverse knife hand at the end, and the fingertips will end up at shoulder level because it's a middle block. So having done the first movement, I'm going to show you the combination of the first 3 movements in Joong-Gun Tul, and it looks like this. You perform a middle block in L stance, forming the reverse knife hand. Then you keep the arms where they are as you do a low front snap kick with the front leg, which is at umbilicus level. Then put the foot down where it was, then step forward into rear foot stance, forming a palm upward block, which I showed you in lesson 37. From there, you can do the next 3 movements where you pivot fully, so you can form an L stance the other way, and then you repeat the same combination that way round. So repeat that over and over again, which in effect are the first 6 movements of the pattern. So it's like this. So do that over and over again. And another combination you need to practice involves a release motion, where you imagine the opponent has grabbed your wrist from this position and you need to pull down to release, like this. So the release motion is part of a combination of 3 techniques, where you do a back fist strike in L stance, and then you do the release motion going from L stance to walking stance, and you square up. Now, usually when you go from L stance to walking stance, you go back forward, loading the weight on the rear leg so you can get control and throw the weight in to wind up for the technique. But you're doing a release motion, so there's an exception to the rule. You're just trying to release and surprise the opponent, so you don't take time going back forward. You just slip the foot out, square up, and pull the arm down. But you do use reaction from here, like that. To release, go straight down, okay? Not too much of a curve, no need to pull in too much. Slightly is not a problem, but just twisting and pulling down should get it to work, okay? Now, after that, you do a punch. Now notice I did it in fast motion. So you pause after the first movement, but the next 2 are done in fast motion, so watch my video on breath control to understand how to do the breathing. And I've shown you how to do 2 fast punches. This is very similar. You just go down, down very sharply. So you square up immediately on the release and you remain full facing for the punch. Then you can practice the combination the other way, like that. So those 6 movements will be towards the middle of the pattern. Now, another technique that you need to know is angle punch, but it's done in slow motion in the pattern. So you'll be in a walking stance position and doing a palm pressing block. And to go to close stance from here to do an angle punch, you need to load the weight onto the front leg and then pivot on the way up so the heels are off the ground. Then you drop the heels as you do the angle punch. Normally, I explain how to turn. I get you to lower yourself, relax, and pivot and drop like a corkscrew going in. This time, it's like a corkscrew, it's like going up, okay? It's rarely done that way, but in this case, it's necessary. Otherwise, you won't be able to do it. You'll end up too low, then you have to go up and down at the end, which is too much movement. So you want to go up much earlier. Down, up, down. There's still a slight relaxation at the beginning. Relax, load the weight, up, down. So time the punch as you drop the heels. Make sure you twist the fist at the end, like that. Just like you do with a punch there, it's going towards the target. Avoid bending the elbow and bringing it in like this, because you're not hitting the target. You need to go towards the target, which is just inside your shoulder, outside your chest, here. Okay, so practice that. Down, up, down, like that. Actually, it's not down, it's just relax. It feels like you're going down, but you don't actually drop your body much, or none at all, okay? So practice that a few times, and then you're ready to practice the pattern. Joong-Gun Tul starts with close ready stance type B, which looks like this. I've shown you close ready stance type A when we did Wonyo Tul. But type B has the hands lower down, level with your umbilicus, 15 centimeters away. So start from that position and then do the first 6 movements which I showed you earlier. So go into a neutral position, pivot 15 degrees at the early stage and relax, and then do reverse knife hand middle block, followed by low front kick and then palm upward block. Pivot fully and repeat the other way. Now pivot the rear foot so the foot's turned in 15 degrees, ready for an L stance. Perform knife hand guarding block. Then move back, forward to walking stance, doing an upper elbow strike, which I've shown you in lesson 39. I showed you this combination. Do another combination like this, the other way. Now step forward into walking stance. Do twin fist high vertical punch, which I showed you in lesson 41. And then relax the arms. They'll drop a little bit and then make a circle and do twin fist upset punch, which I showed you in lesson 40. But very often I see people from here making a very big circle and it's a bit awkward. The circle should be smaller. So the reason why is that they fail to relax. They go from this move, they start the second move straight away instead of relaxing first. Now what happens when you relax? Your arms will drop, like when you go to a neutral position. So the arms will drop and then you circle after, okay? This is the way I prefer to do it. I just see so many people doing this and it just doesn't follow the same rhythm as we do all techniques. You know, for example, the first movement in Dosan, 1, and then you relax, the arms drop a little bit, yeah? You don't go 1, 2 like that. You relax, so the arms drop a little bit. So the same thing here. They'll drop a little bit and then you continue the move after that. Now from there, you're going to turn using a spot turn, which is like Dosan Tul, going from second to third movement. You step on the center line, 1 foot back, then you pivot. Now you're going to do an X fist rising block. So the arms are to the side and you go to a walking stance, X fist rising block, which moves like this in a slight curve, okay? So you cross it early. If you do it too straight, the arms will cross very late. So you need to cross a bit earlier and go up, okay? And make sure your arms are not too far back. They're to the side, if anything, slightly in front, so you don't want to bring them too far back. So from here, straight up. And you should be able to see underneath your arms, okay? Okay, my dough box hanging a little bit, but normally you could see underneath. Okay, so from there. Now you pivot with the rear foot and then go to L stance, back fist strike, release high punch, which is the combination I showed you earlier. And then you put your feet together and you do it the other way. Remember the second and third movements are done in fast motion. Okay, now from there, don't pivot at this stage, just step backwards, bringing your feet together. And once you transfer the weight onto your right foot, you pivot with the right foot to go to a walking stance and do a high block using the double forearm in walking stance. Now load the weight onto your right leg, go back, forward into to L stance and punch. So effectively this is a reverse punch because it's opposite to your leading leg. The right leg this is a right L stance. Now do a side kick with a punch. So you punch at the same time you kick, and it's a middle kick, so you kick shoulder level. And then do walking stance, double forearm block again. Then you go back forward, punching L stance again. Repeat the side kick, but this time go to L stance, forearm guarding block. So kick and punch and forearm guarding block. Now just a word about how you pivot when you kick. When you do side kick followed by a walking stance, you pivot 3 times. You pivot 75 degrees out for the kick, but then you withdraw the leg, you pivot back again. But you go into walking stance, so usually you have to pivot into the walking stance with the rear foot. So you pivot for the 3rd time. But when you're doing L stance, you pivot out 75 degrees, pivot back, but you don't need to pivot anymore, you can just step into L stance. So bear that in mind when you're doing the pattern. So when you've done the second side kick, you finish in forearm guarding block, then you go back forward to low stance, palm pressing block, which I showed you in lesson 38. And repeat that combination, guarding block, palm pressing block. Now you do the slow motion angle punch, which I showed you earlier, and then you finish off with a fixed stance, U-shaped block. You bring the feet together and you do it the other way. And I showed you how to do that in lesson 43. Then you return to the ready posture, close ready stance type B, moving your left foot like that. Okay, so this is how Joong-Gun Tul looks like in full. Joong-Gun Tul was one of my favorite patterns when I was a color belt, and then I got to black belt and learned very interesting patterns. But I still like Joong-Gun to this day. In fact, I like all patterns. I practice them from Chonji all the way through to Tongil Tul. And I recommend that you, as a practitioner, still practice the initial pattern, Chonji, Dangun, Dosan, all the way up to your own break. With Joong-Gun Tul, I always found it difficult to finish in the same spot I started with. And with patterns, you need to do that. Start and finish in the same spot. With Joong-Gun, I found that I went past the start position and went too far away. So you need to adjust your stances when you're going out doing the initial part of the pattern. Don't make your stances too long. Coming back, no, don't make them too short, I should say. And when you're coming back, don't make them too long. Although you've got low stance, it needs to be a bit longer than walking stance by 1 foot. But tweak your stances so that you adjust it so that you end up in the same spot you started with. So as an individual, you all got different body types, different size legs to your body ratio. So you've got to adjust the stances accordingly. So that's part of your practice with all patterns. End up in the same spot you started with, okay? So enjoy practicing the pattern, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.